I will endeavour to answer this. In effect, to be quite honest, there's only one answer, because everything that I spoke about before, as we've all been chatting about, really people have all heard it before, and it's simple. We were just saying, weren't we, that it's a simple message, but it's often very, very difficult to practice to be completely, kind of present at every time. But actually, what we're going to do now is there are, sometimes there are scenarios in life or things that you might find difficult. Generally, if somebody asks a question, because obviously I do kind of group things from on occasions, and one person's question often is everybody's question. So if anybody does have a question, Jane's got the microphone, so Jane can obviously ask her own question. Thank you. If you've got a question, she's going to come up to you with the microphone, and you have to practically snog it to be heard.
I was wondering if you could talk about the experience of the process of clearing any stuff when it comes up.
Okay. Yes, that's a very good kind of concept, isn't it? So, well, essentially, anything that wobbles, the stillness of the presence, anything that wobbles the feeling of being at ease. And I think that, again, the more we will be alone, perhaps in nature, perhaps doing some meditation, I think probably everybody has experienced what it feels like to be at ease, or to be having a lovely time, to be in a dialogue or a conversation or feeling good. And therefore, when that experience is wobbled, that is the stuff coming up. So that can come up, whether it comes up, as I say, through a reaction that is either one of crossness or irritation or upset or anything that wobbles the stillness. So the first thing, of course, with any of these things, it can come up. Different people have different ways of experiencing. Excuse me. I think it's always in the body, but not everybody can feel it in the body. So often it's very, very visceral for some people. They'll feel a constriction in the heart, they'll feel a tightness in the tummy, the head might get tight, might be an all-over feeling. But sometimes for people it's a thought, or they'll immediately go into a narrative. So everybody, how they experience stuff coming up will be a little bit different. But the important thing is to notice. The number one thing is that if we notice that we're either thinking something that isn't helpful to us, or it's about someone else, or we've got a constriction in our body in any way, even if it seems that, well, that of course we feel like that because we've been on the phone for 3 hours waiting for the gas people or something, of course we'd be irritated. Unfortunately, that's not the case. That is the aberration. Every time we think, well, that's natural, that's human, then it isn't. It's actually still an opportunity for being still. So the first thing is we have to notice it. So we'll notice a change. So whatever that is, and all of you, again, it's an experiential thing. You notice you're out of your center. And when you've noticed it, the really important thing is to press pause. A metaphorical pause, it's like pressing the pause on this film, because everything going on the outer realms, everything it's like a video game, a film of our life. We are the players on the stage of our life. And what's going on outside is just the stage of life. So if we can put a pause on it, put stillness, stop everything, and know that it's very important in that point not to act out of it. Now, of course, what's going to happen is people are going to make mistakes. It can't not be, especially when we first get this concept and you're going to go rah at somebody, or you're going to withdraw, or you're going to do any of those things. Sorry about my voice, clear my throat. So if that happens, if we haven't been able to clear it, the important thing, again, is to notice we haven't, and very quickly row back and say, I'm sorry, immediately to the person, because it is us. That doesn't mean that the person outside us, we might want a behaviour change, or we might not be happy with what's happened, but it is always us. So if at first we keep acting out of our reaction, the key is not to, again, as I said, not to have stuff on stuff. So we then don't beat ourselves up for acting out. What's important is to ideally press pause. we're able to take that breath deep into our tummy, deep into our being, and we have all the space in the world. And what happens? What happens the more we do it is we recognise that there is timelessness. The time is not there, and we have time to not act out of that reactivity. And what can happen in that space is if we're able to not have the narrative. So the key is to not have the narrative, because the moment we're in that person's done that, we're in that psychological drama and we are repeating it. So the key is we feel it, we need to feel it to heal it. So however we feel it, whether, as I say, it can be a visceral thing in the body, it can be a thought in the head, but we really need to know it's happened, to know we've gone out of our centre. That's why it's really important to practice being in our centre. That's why doing breath work, meditation, every day, throughout the day, coming back to centre, so that at least we recognise we're out of our centre. Because a lot of people are out of their centre all the time, they don't know it, they're racing around, they're out of their being. So you need to first of all notice, if you feel it, you can heal it. So the first thing is you notice it, I feel it, I can heal it. It's very important then to take a big pacifying breath, a conscious breath, because then that stillness comes about and we're able to completely transform our life. Because if we have a neutral response to what's going on outside, we have the opportunity to completely change our experience. And then what can happen is sometimes the stuff will clear like immediately. There'll be a kind of moving of the energy. Sometimes people will, to stop the narrative, it's often good to have a mantra, whether we say, I am where I am, it's okay, I am where I am, I am where I am, I'm here, now. Or sometimes doing a mantra that isn't English can help. So there's the Buddhist mantra, something like Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, where we immediately start giving the brain something to do, the mind something to do, because the mind otherwise can start to make it believable that we're allowed to react, that of course we are, because of course that's irritating that that person has done this or that, but that isn't the case. So then we will we press pause, we feel it, we can heal it, we breathe in, we don't act out of our reaction. Sometimes that stuff can just melt straight away because it can be something that's very immediate. And of course, the more we do that, the more we do it, it becomes a natural state. And then the more we're still in that silence and in that stillness, and there isn't a continued psychological drama, we can actually drop into that space and we can clear that wound, that energy, that karmic pattern from whence it first came, which could be lifetimes ago. But it takes practice. And the key is, if it doesn't work, and if you do act out of your reaction, and the whole thing cycles round again, it's really important not to beat yourself up, because that deepens the wound, and that deepens the process, and it keeps you more likely to stay in the pattern. So it's to never ever give up, not think you've got anywhere to get to, just keep coming back to the acceptance and acceptance of your process, acceptance of where you are. And then what can happen too sometimes is you'll have a reaction to something, you'll be very hurt, something in front of you happens and it's such a deep wound, and the person said something, you've lost your job, you've failed at something's gone so wrong that it's hit so deeply into the core of your being, of the feelings of, that you can't get things right, that you're not okay, that you're not good enough, all those things. And sometimes it can be a small thing that triggers that, but it can be a big thing. The feeling could just persist. So it isn't like, although I'm saying press pause, the key is, yes, press pause. The key is not to act out of the reaction, but it's very important to realise that the discomfort in the body, the feeling of unease and dis-ease, out of ease, can persist, and sometimes processes can take a few days. You can be going on in your life, but you can feel that you're still upset about what happened. But again, that takes such discipline not to get into the chat in your own head, or with your friends, or with the family, of that person did this, that person did that, blah, 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 because that keeps you locked in. And then what can happen over a period of time is that the feeling starts to dissipate, because if you're not feeding it with a narrative, it's got nothing to feed on. So therefore the energy starts to just disappear and change and transform. Now some people are visual and they like to imagine the energy moving, because energy it can be transformed, transmuted, is just energy. All of these our stuff is just energy. Sometimes we think, oh, fabulous, amazing, I've done it, I've cleared that, that's great. Now, I'm there. And then, of course, a week later, something happens, and then bang, you go, oh God, and it all happens again. So the key, one of the really important things, is not to think, I've done it, got there. Because the moment we do that, we're again in our ego, in our mind, we're trying to get somewhere, trying to be a person that's clear, rather than just do the work. So the key is to recognise that we'll only know we're clear of something when it doesn't impact on us. And over time, the same thing can happen. Somebody can say the same thing, and we realise we didn't react to it, let alone act out of it. And then we realise it was always us. And I think, does that answer your question?
You said a lot of what I wanted to hear.
Good. Thank you, Jamie.
Could I,
Joe? First I'd like to say thank you, Jude, for everything that you do and everything that you are. I think you transformed everyone in this room, so thank you so much. Appreciate that so much. And it's amazing to be in a room full of other people that have had the same experience as individuals. It's great, so thank you lot as well. My question is, carrying on from Jamie's, so in the clearing and the working with stuff that's coming up, especially when you're going deeper in the layers of the onion, what I sometimes get stuck with is understanding what stuff is coming up and why it's coming up and where it comes from. So being understanding it mentally, but also letting it go. Whereas it feels like there's a bit of a mix. Sometimes you should just feel it and not attach it at all with your mind, but sometimes it seems helpful to have an understanding of the patterns. And I guess there's no answer about a particular way it should be, but I get a little bit stuck about when should I think and when should I just feel and let go. So,
well, that's brilliant, Johnny, thank you. Well, always we need to let go. Always we need to feel and heal and let go. However, we are Westerners, and the Western mind does like to understand. And I think the Indian philosophy is just let it go, and they wouldn't attach stories to it, and it's just that, the anger coming up, or whatever it is coming up, they wouldn't necessarily even call it anger, but the energy coming up. But I think as Westerners, we have, sorry, I don't want to be turning away from no. As Westerners, we like to understand things. Now, and therefore we might as well go with, to an extent, what works for us. And therefore, I would observe that if we're on a path of freedom, clearing, loosely we might call it a spiritual path, I think that it is actually really important to, inverted commas, do therapy first. Because I think that, yes, to answer your question, ultimately, yes, we need to let go of these energies that arise and free ourselves. But ultimately, most people who are trying to do that, often they'll get caught in the mind, not most people, some people get caught in this concept of silence, concept of no thingness, concept, but that's a concept, and therefore they can often distract from the fact there's layers of issues, for want of a better word, things where they find it difficult to be in relationship, they find it difficult to be in groups of people, all manner of different things, and therefore there can be a skipping of steps. So I would say that essentially therapeutic work where we'll have an understanding of our own wounding, of our own patterns, where we will go into our family history, where we'll go into our experience, because of course families are very complex units, and different people in the same family will have different experiences of the same parenting, of the same situation. So for us, I think a therapeutic journey into understanding where we feel completely not heard, so angry, and of course it starts off, we might think it's with our parents, it's with our big sister or our big brother or our little sister, And that can, I think, is an important part of the journey, to recognise the stories, to be able to access the feelings, to be able to start to at least have an environment to go rah, and have somebody listen and hear and hold and understand and not judge and be safe. So that is an important part, and we can go, and get insights. And I see that pattern. My big brother squished me and never let me talk, and then I keep finding a big brother in different scenarios in life, who happens to be my boss or my person I'm doing sport with. So you start to see the pattern, and I think that's a really, really vital part, because we can take responsibility and then move into going, okay, it's not my big brother or my parents, it's all me. And then we start to go, okay, this situation in front of me, I'm familiar with it, and I know that I'm now responding to this person as if they're my brother, but I'm looking through the filter of my own pain. So I think that having an understanding of our triggers and understanding the stories is a vital part of it. But we then have to let go of that. So we then get to the point where we will feel that anger rising up, or we feel, but if we go too much into the narrative of it, we can then get stuck, because we can get stuck as a person who's, I'm like that because. And then ironically, that can keep us in a loop again. And I think that, and identified with it, because we then can get identified with, my mother didn't give me enough attention, so this is why I'm like this, rather than actually that feeling now needs to be cleared. And it then becomes important to suspend narrative, really, because the more aware we become, the more we recognise that we can go round and round and be doing I'm having a shift, but actually we get caught. So I think there comes a point where it's a matter of literally getting so disciplined, and my father would be proud to hear me say those words, because he's very big on discipline, but it is a discipline where we have to have a discipline where we'll feel that feeling come up. We know our wounds. We start to go, I feel like one of mine was I was wrong, or whatever it might be. We know it, so we'll know the feeling but there's no point going in the story. We suspend the process, because then what we can do is get more committed to staying still. Because if we're clearing away our stuff as it arises, and we suspend the narrative, then we're getting to a place where we're actually committed to stillness in every moment. So we get more committed to the 24/7 presence, because the ripples on the lake are going to be less. But of course it can be very intense. There can be a huge attachment to our stuff, and a huge attachment to our ideals, our beliefs, our wrongs that have been done to us, all that. So it does take a great deal of discipline and commitment. But I think there comes a point, and particularly everyone in this room, at the point where actually we know that the discipline is to be more committed 24/7 to the staying still and not getting caught up. And I think that if there's some difficulty, if you're getting into the woods with it a bit, that's when I will encourage people to do something extreme like dynamic meditation. And I'll be going, some people I'll go, right, you're going to do an hour of dynamic meditation every day. And I mean, obviously I don't expect anybody to do what I say, but I would encourage. Because there are points where something like, I mean, when I've done intensive work with people and they've been with me, they've had me sitting there while they're doing an intense meditation, it's really powerful. And it just gets the stuff out of you. And a dynamic meditation, for any of you who haven't done one with me, is that really you'll spend 15 minutes doing a breath work that completely kind of spins you into slightly out of your thoughts, and then you'll spend 15 minutes emoting and crying out and shouting it out and getting it out of your being, and then you'll do this hoo, 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 hoo for 15 minutes, and then 10 minutes of complete silence, and then moving around, and it's very powerful, and it is literally, you can get stuff out of you. But those kind of things they're useful, and I've seen that people will do that without any therapy work, and people can be, Because of course, a bit like doing the oming, it takes you to a space. But if they haven't done the therapeutic work, very quickly will pick up their bags again and go back home and still argue with their, family. So I think, does that answer you? Good. That's good. Let's Leslie.
So Julia, thank you for all of your amazing insights as always, and mindful that I think everybody in the room would only be here if they believed and supported everything that you taught us. Tell me why we don't always manage to do it. So we're intelligent enough to know that it all makes perfect sense, and when we're sat with you, whether we're in your lovely flat, wherever we are, we're like, oh, yeah. And then we go home or we go to work or wherever the situation might be, and we feel triggered, and we know we've got to breathe, and we know we've got to clear, and at the same time we want to stab our partner. Sorry, it's not that bad, I promise. But as human beings, we are flawed. So no, I don't think anybody here would be anything other than thinking, God, you make so much sense. It's beautiful and amazing. So what stops the reality when we get home and we're faced with it, when in front of you we are so committed to living what you're teaching us?
I think that people are very, very, very identified with who they think they are. So ultimately what we're talking about is the truth of who we are. The truth of who we are is beyond any of our identifications. Now, of course, the identifications can be very painful, but they can be very, very powerfully linked to our wounds. So therefore, to actually let go of a cycle of reactivity, which is coming from, a reactivity is the arrow points to where our hurt is. We are so convinced that's who we are, that to let go of that is like dying. So ultimately, for us to be free, we have to die to our perceived self. We have to die to the self we think we are. We have to not be in any way identified with whatever it might be. Other people will still project onto us that we're a whatever, profession, sports person. But we have to let that go completely to such an extent that we experience the truth of who we are, which, as I said, can only be experienced. So when you are with me, then you will see yourself reflected in the stillness within me. It was the stillness in you. It is the namaste. The namaste, the spirit of me, is the spirit in you. And so that's why when you're with me, you experience that.
Can I live with you?
That's so much
There's a
easier.
queue.
Sorry, we're coming. Disappointed. I asked her. Sorry, Julia.
So when you're with me, you know who you are.
I do.
You know who you
I
are.
do.
Because of the reflection, which is within you. So, but there's an attachment to the created self. Oh, sorry, I've done something weird. No, there's an attachment to the created self, because even if a lot of the created self is things that people like. People want to be a better somebody, a successful somebody, a happy somebody, a outgoing somebody. So of course those are identifications that people don't want to let go of either. But of course if we're holding on to that, then we're going to be holding on to the pattern with a partner, but that's going to come from the wound, which will often be something like, you're not loving me enough, so therefore deep inside there's a place where you're attached to the part that isn't yet knowing it's all within you. So I think really the reason people don't do it is it's a fear of the death of who you are, who you're not, actually. Because this work is about it's not about knowing who you are so much, it's about letting go of who you're not. And who you're not, if you react, that's not who you are. It can't be. Any single reaction is an arrow to a place where you're hurt and where you're connected and attached to that wound, that that story, whatever it might be. And of course, it's very, very much keeps people alive, because people can go, you know, we've all known people who will practically, well, yes, go to their deaths, still angry with a partner that left them 40 years ago. You know, people will hang on to these kind of issues, whatever we want to call them, because that's how they know who they are, that's how they feel alive, that's how they are, but it isn't who they are. So I would say that if you're going out of the room, my room, the flat, whatever, with the commitment, and yet you go straight back in, then it means that there's some part of you that's attached to that, and it's a terrifying thing to let that go, because you don't know who you are without it. So I would say that actually it takes a great leap. The biggest thing that is limits people is fear, and I think one of the biggest fears is for anybody is death, and it's the fear of not being who we are, fear of, you know, Julia disappearing. Whereas actually, if we can disappear while we're still alive, and yet still keep, as I say, on the human journey, then there's nothing to fear. But I think it's the fear of not being who you are that keeps you attached, ironically, to the issues. Whereas, of course, when you let those go, so say you go out of my room and you do stay centered 24/7, and you stayed it, and you didn't react, and that went on 1 week, and then it went on 2 weeks, and then it went on 3 weeks. Of course, the screen in front of you would change. So of course it would, it couldn't not. So that is what people fear, because often we're very familiar and safe with what we know. So we may get pissed off with our partner or whatever it might be, or want to stab them or...
No, don't really. If he dies tomorrow, it's not me, I promise. I don't need it.
But actually, that's uncomfortable, but it's familiar, and it's who you know you are. So actually, if you absolutely commit to this work, and 24/7 for 1 week, for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks, for 4 weeks, and you know, you're living with me now, so there's not any, not allowed not to. Things would change, they cannot not change. And if they change, that can be disorienting, it can be, you know, upsetting, things that are familiar cycles all start to change. People who you thought were, you know, people you were going to be around forever might disappear. People, you know, behave in different ways seemingly. So of course, the main thing is it's the fear of change, the fear of loss, the fear of death, really. Because ultimately, to be free, we need to let go of all of our, well, ultimately let go of everything. Because eventually we are going to let go of this body. And in letting go of this body, we let go of all the achievements we've done on this planet, everything we've ever done will disappear like the wake of a boat. And of course, that's why it's important that we know who we are now, because it would be lovely just to let it all go now. And then, as I said, then things start to come through us, and we can play and have fun and enjoy being here, rather than being clinging to, our identification. So yes, if that said it, yes.
That's brilliant, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I've been right up close.
Yeah,
Testing, testing. I've been trying, in my head, I don't know how I'm going to ask, if it's a question even, but I've already told Nadia and Matt on the way here, you see, I used to be very reactive, and I'm not as reactive as I was, but ever so often, someone will flash a light in a car, and I'll be going, wank! And I did that in the wing mirror so they could see it. And I was laughing at myself, going, what are you doing, you absolute idiot? And like, found it quite amusing. And I did know, I thought, oh, look at you reacting. There's a bit of things, you know, no matter how calm and stuff, would I just become a totally different person?
Yeah,
and then times with Italian chefs and things, you know, go, you know, I mean, a Mediterranean, you know, that hot-headed thing, it's kind of an energy that is quite appealing as well. So where do you go?
Well, that's why people don't do it. You've answered absolutely the question. Why people don't do this work is they are attached to the identifications. So we don't know. And so yes, and some people quite like hanging on to the energy. So they quite enjoy a bit of anger or a bit of fuck off. I think I'm just enjoying it. So they're enjoying it, so they're very attached. And as you say, people get identified with their personalities, and of course it's everywhere in the media, in places that people kind of like people's stuff. So of course, at the moment, ultimately, if you're on a path of consciousness, then the commitment is to let it go, let it go. Now, of course, you're still going to be you. When I was 24, say, 40 years ago, I would say that I was recognisable as now, and I have people here who know me then, know me since I was 4. So I'm probably recognisable as, my energy that comes out of me. But I know there's a completely difference because there isn't the reactivity. But I'm still somebody who loves gathering people. I'm still living a human journey. It's just much more fun not having reactivity. So, of course, that's not going to happen yet, in probably millions of years. But if people, say the Italian chef did it, we don't know what's going to be his expression if he clears away that. It doesn't mean it's going to be, dull. And I think that you've absolutely answered the question that Leslie asked, that the reason people don't do the work is because they're quite attached to their stuff, and they quite like it. And then relationships, people will know people with that person's like this. So I think that ultimately it's only something that we can commit to ourselves, but recognise the more still you are, the more you can see that within that, there's amazing things. We were in Ronnie Scott's and it was wonderful. The music was incredible, the band were amazing, but I think that a lot of the music had come out of people's stuff, but doesn't mean we wouldn't enjoy it. And it's, a lot of running, we know, Fee and me run many miles on the downs together, and we know the athletes that their brilliant performances have still come out of tension, they've still come out of stuff. So it's not that people won't achieve great things out of their tension, they won't, create all manner of things out of their tension, but we're talking about they still wouldn't necessarily know who they are. They may still cling on that, and then it's very difficult to die, very difficult to leave their body when the time comes. So does that kind of...
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That thing about, kind of just being letting go of everything, and the fear of that is interesting.
Yeah, I think it's the fear. I think people get identified with their personality.
Yeah.
They get identified, so they hang on, and they don't want it to die. And of course, ultimately, we can't be at ease if we're holding on to all that. And we can't really relate to one another, really, because we're never safe with somebody who's going to react. Whereas if somebody's clearing all their stuff, then they're completely safe, because there's not going to be a kind of, tendency to react, basically. But yeah, people are identified, and it's not that in this world there is amazing stuff coming out of people's stuff, but that we're talking about experiencing who we truly are, and a lot of those people wouldn't. They will be chasing the next success, the next song, the next, whatever it might be, really.
I just wanted to ask about when you start to clear, or in your experience, when you did maybe in 2030 you changed, did you find that your friendships also changed? Because what's hard to kind of, I guess that would be part of letting go, or your reflection, I guess, of, like you said, your people you're around your mirror. And when you do more of this work, you see it in others, and did you ever find that it harder to be around maybe certain people? And then did your people you're around change, or is that just natural because they're a reflection of you and your stuff? Because I know we spoke about this as well, like in my work, and I see people's stuff. And then you said to me yesterday that no client is a difficult client. Do you have the same with with friendships, I guess? That was my question.
I suppose my path's a bit of a different path, because obviously Wendy's known me since I was a little one, and I've really been always on it, haven't I, Wendy? From when I was a little girl, from when I was 8, really, when we went to church together all the time, and I knew that I'd come here. I sat in church, I've said this story before, but the vicar was talking about the serpent with the tail in its mouth, and that represented our resolution in it, and we needed to clear the darkness from within us to be free and to be here. So I had that awareness, and I probably taught lifetimes and lifetimes. I've probably been, teaching this forever. But I came in, so I knew when I was young. That doesn't mean I didn't have huge challenges I needed to work out. And my areas of places where it really, my stuff came up were essentially in my running, because I wasn't particularly worried about success in academia or anywhere. I wasn't ambitious anywhere, except my running. So the running, I had to witness my stuff and my ego round in cycles, where I'd let it go and know that it being in the step was vital, and that's all there was, to getting caught up in running times. The fortunate thing about choosing running as my art form is that I've got slower and slower. So actually I chose a perfect thing to be able to let go, because ultimately my body has just got slower and slower. And so, but I always knew that area. So and the other area was particularly my relationships with men, and that there was lots of learning there. And as you all know, I've had lots of relationships, and now with a lovely Anadi. But Anadi is a reflection of my inner journey. So did things change? I suppose my whole life, things have always been changing, but I've always been on this path, and I've started teaching it from really at school, didn't I? From when I was, sorry, I keep looking at Wen's because she's been with me forever, but really people would come to me, and then I started working for my coach when I was just 18, and I didn't know people had problems, because, well, marriage problems and things, but I was working with all these adults and they all started to talk to me. So I was always somebody who guided, and I always had a kind of channel of awareness and wisdom. That didn't mean that I didn't have loads to work out myself. As you know, I had an eating disorder, I had relationship stuff, I had running stuff. So I suppose in my experience, as the life's gone by, yes, of course, relationships have disappeared because things have evolved. But I haven't ever been someone who's lived a traditional life. I've always been doing this work. It evolved from, I was one of the first PTs back in the late 80s, but then it evolved into this. And I thought, let's do some training in this. Look, people keep chatting about their problems. So my own experience has been that the biggest commitment I've ever had is that I know if I react, it's me. And I've been teaching it forever. And I think teaching it is helpful because, it's endlessly, awareness. I'm not also somebody who's been particularly someone who's worried or been particularly stressed. My own issues have been all more depression and, just a different kind of thing. So reactivity, I was always somebody who would immediately say sorry if I reacted, but also was more internal. So it would be a kind of internal thing. I'd be probably somebody who more withdrew, but that's still for clearing, obviously. So my own experience is, yes, of course things have changed over the years, and of course relationships have changed. My relationships with the men I've been with, everything's different in the mirror. And what's different is I have such fun now, because I think I had more struggle, whereas I don't struggle now. I probably am busier than I've ever been in my life. I probably have more clients. I have my YouTube channel. I try and write my blog. I want to do more events. I'm probably more busy than I was in my 30s, but it's much easier. And I just am with the next thing and the next thing. So presence has made it just such fun and just an amazing thing. Yeah, and there's no difficult clients. I was saying that you never go from the perspective that there's ever a difficult client. If there's anything that, I don't have any difficult clients, but when I was a younger woman, I'd sometimes find things difficult, but it's always me. Always me. I don't know, have I answered your question clearly? I think people, are you saying about other people's stuff? I think the clearer you get, of course you see that people are identified and in their mind, or they're identified with their pattern, or they're identified, of course. And the more still you are, it doesn't matter, you meet the person where they are. And that's who they believe themselves to be. It's not for us. We don't know the path and other traits. We don't know how many lifetimes they need to go round to start to experience themselves. So I suppose you just meet people where they are. And if we're disappointed because we're seeing somebody's not meeting us, we're still in ourselves, basically. So, does that answer?
Yeah.
Leslie's having a second.
May I?
Yeah, of course you can. I'm teasing
You sure?
Of course I'm teasing you.
I just wanted to build on the where we identify that people are disappointing us, we're still in our stuff. And I just want, you and I have talked about this before, but I'd really just like to hear it again, if I may indulge you for a moment, Julia. So if we are really, really, really working on not acting out of our reactions, and we've moved along in that journey, and we have question marks about other people in our lives, and taking on board everything you've said about that's still a reflection of us, just share with us again your thinking, if I may ask you to. Where does one stop? Well, one never stops. It's a bit like I think it's a bit like this work. I think it's a bit like a diet where people say, "Oh wow, I'm going to Weight Watchers." It's not about Weight Watchers. It's about a shift in one's whole mental attitude to their food intake. For me, this is a whole shift in how I approach how I am in my life. It's not just like a puppy's for it's for life. It's not just for Christmas. It's a whole shift in one's whole attitude to how one lives one's life. But you and I have talked about that. Doesn't mean you're a doormat. So you could go on and on thinking, oh gosh, that's a reflection of me, and where you get a reaction from the person you love the most that you perhaps wasn't quite what you expected, and you keep thinking, oh, hang on, that's my mirror, and where's my part in this? So just share with us your thinking as to where you decide that's just not quite what I want anymore, versus I've got to keep shifting and changing because I'm clearly seeing a reflection of me. Does that make sense?
Yes. I think that it's not about, at some levels, making a decision with your mind. Of course we do use the mind, but ultimately, if you are at every single moment knowing something's to do with you, and you're coming back to that place, and you've got to the place where you're in a relationship, say, where you've stopped reacting completely. So really you need to be in the situation where until you've completely, utterly done your bit in anything, whether it's a job, a relationship, and project, if you are still reacting, when you're still having some sort of movement of energy, then of course there's still work to be done in that situation. Now that doesn't actually, of course, mean there's no set answer, because if you're in a terribly unhappy situation, in a job or work, and you're not able to do the clearing work, and it's too difficult and it's too hard, well, really, why would you stay? So, yes, of course, you can then go, I can't do this is too hard for me as a human, and you move yourself out of it. Well, of course, if it's not done, this stuff is going to reveal itself again. So it's going to come up. It can't not come up again. If it's not completely cleared, it is going to come up again. But that doesn't mean this is our playground. This is our experience. There's no have to stay. There's no have to do anything. And again, that's only the conditioning that goes, well, we've got to stick at something, or we've got to stay in something. Now, it might be that we're completely and utterly, still reacting to somebody, or still in a difficult state that we can't bear it anymore. Well, why wouldn't we go? We might only be staying because of conditioning. You see, it's loops upon loops upon loops. There's no one answer. So we might be, oh, this is too hard, I've got to go. So we go, and then what will happen is inevitably we get another job, another relationship. Those are the usual kind of areas. Then what can happen is you'll have done some work in the relationship or job enough to have shifted. Then of course it's going to come up again, but you might be at a more aware level. So the pattern can kind of go like this. So you'll be in that relationship, you go, I don't like it, I know I still haven't finished the work, but I want to go, relationship, job, whatever. Inevitably, that you're going to have your stuff come up in the mirror again, because it doesn't matter if it's a different person or a different job, but it will come up, but it can be another level of awareness. So you're going to be going, oh, there I am again. it's me. But it's a different person, but you're going to have more awareness, or a different job, or a different project, but you're going to see it in a different way, and you'll be able to clear some more. Now, sometimes people will stay in one situation and they can clear and clear, and then the whole thing, I can't ever say whether the mirror in front of you means that the person's going to change, because they won't necessarily change, but something will change, or you're going to move out of the situation. I can't say what will be the outcome of us doing our work, but something will happen. So it might be that we get to the point we go, no, I'm done with this. I'm moving, doing that. I'm moving to here. But it will, until we've cleared our stuff, it will come up. It cannot not. So actually the scenarios of life aren't really as important. Of course, again, our conditioning, our society goes, we're married, we've got to stay married. Oh, they've been oh goodness, what, they're breaking up again. Or, oh no, what, they're always changing job. Oh, they can't stick at anything. You know, there are so many conditionings in society that trap us. Now, luckily, I was untrappable.
No one's pleased about that.
Yeah, so I was untrappable in everything. So I've not lived a normal life. I haven't lived the life that would be considered normal from when I was very young. And so I've challenged the societal norms. Now, that didn't mean I didn't have to work at the discomfort. I remember somebody saying, I think I'd only come out of one marriage by then, somebody saying, how can she get a relationship therapist when she can't do her own life? And I remember hearing that coming back to me. So I had to, that was a reflection of what I actually thought myself. Because we're only going to get reflected back what we think. And by the time, I evolved, I didn't mind what people thought, but that took time. So I think what I'm saying is life has to be experienced. So we can't go, oh, I've got to stay because I'm still reacting. We've got to make our choices. We make our decisions. Can't be a right or wrong decision. There's just us experiencing living. And we could go into another relationship. The thing that goes wrong is people think, this person's the answer. That relationship wasn't good. That job wasn't good. This one's going to be the answer. The answer's inside us. So obviously, we will, move into different scenarios. And the more we evolve, then things will inevitably change. But it isn't about necessarily when to make a decision. Different people make different decisions. People might have said to me, I leapt out of things too soon. Well, as it happened, I chose and followed my own path at various times. And the person I am now, I wouldn't change anything I've done because I'm where I am because of it all. So I don't know, there's no one answer, basically. Does that answer you?
No, it's extremely helpful to listen. Thank you. Extremely helpful. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? You want to go? Okay. Lovely to see you, Bea. Thank you.
See everyone.
Yeah. So if you go on to Run with Julia, you can see me and Bea on her birthday running.
Thank you.
Okay, I was going to ask, you talk about there is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path. I was wondering if you could say more about when you're caught, well, you aren't, but if I were caught in the psychological drama, bearing that in mind, just saying more about, in that moment, remembering that this is the path to happiness. And I don't know what my question is, but it's around that.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that there can't be any other way, and that
We can't be, whatever's happening at this very moment in any of our lives couldn't be any different, because whatever's happening now is coming from our past. And if we want it to change, we have to come to absolute presence to know that to create a different future, we have to be completely still and not going and acting out of our reactivity, out of our patterns, all of the things that are familiar to us. So yes, if we're in a psychological drama, which would be that we're feeling upset and we've got a story about that upset, whatever that might be, then of course ultimately couldn't be anywhere than you are, but it is the place where if you stay with the drama, then you're going to stay repeating the same pattern, and you're going to stay probably feeling the same feelings, having the same experiences. So if you are aware that you're attached to unhappiness, for instance, because lots of people unfortunately are attached to struggle, upset, and they'll project it onto something else. They'll project it onto illness or injury, or the person out there, or their job, or their health, or their hormones, or there's many things that are said to be the thing that is why they're unhappy. Then that ironically creates the psychological drama. Now that doesn't mean that when we're unwell or things are difficult, that it's not a bit discomforting because we're in a body. But the more still we are, we can be not very well, but not be upset about it. We can be having hormonal shifts in our body, but not get upset about it. That doesn't mean we wouldn't seek something to ease our body. If we got a painful knee, we take some painkillers for our knee. If we've got, why wouldn't we? It isn't that we don't help ourselves be eased in the body, but if we're upset about something, whether it's a physical thing or somebody or a change in our life or something going on, and we keep in that narrative, and then what can happen is we chat to other people about it, and everybody else joins in and goes, oh no, okay. It's everywhere in our society or in our world. And then people get terribly upset. Now, this doesn't mean that I don't have an awareness of people who are suffering all over the world. I know that it's, obviously I have great empathy for anybody who's in a difficult place. But if we read something in the news or listen to something in the radio and we get upset about it, we're not helping anybody. We are lowering the vibration rather than raising the vibration. And therefore, there is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path. Is absolutely that in any given moment, we make a difference in the world by keeping our vibration high. If we get joined in any psychological drama, whether it's about something going on in the world, something in our own life that isn't as we like it, the weather's not good and we've got an event coming, whatever it might be, we are the ones that are creating the disharmony in ourselves. It's always a choice. So whether we come back to centre, whether we come back to this is it, this is as it is, and we suspend that narrative. Now that takes discipline, and it takes coming back, and of course it's easier sometimes to just go along on the thing of and of course someone will always join in with us. You can find it anywhere. You can find it. I was in the coffee shop today, of course, having my breakfast, and actually it was a lady beside me who immediately people are projecting. So one thing immediately she projected, which was a lovely lady, but the conditioning's there. So I'd gone in and I had sat at a table, there was a table, me, and I'd left that gap just to give a bit of space because I felt she might not necessarily want me crowding her. More people came in, so I went and sat near her and I said, I was giving you a bit of space, but do you mind me being here? She said, no. Then she said, of course it's become habitual that we won't get near each other. Now, of course, I wasn't keeping away from her for any of that. So she's already creating a thing. Now, as I say, she's a very nice lady. And the next thing she said to me was, what a lovely day. It lifts you, doesn't it? And I didn't want to go and say, well, I'm all right anyway. Whatever the weather's like. So I just met her where she was. I didn't go, well, I was fine yesterday, it was raining actually. I didn't need any lifting, because actually I don't need any lifting. But I just met her where she was, and that's what we were saying, Chloe. I said, oh yeah, it's lovely, because why would I not? But as I say, those are very small examples of somebody who, in her own way, is creating her own narrative, and she's projecting it onto me. Now that's, a small thing, but of course, if in our own life we're creating it, and then we try to join someone else in, and that goes on everywhere. I notice it in gym changing rooms. Oh, with only one hairdryer being working for 3 months. And people say those things, and I definitely don't join in with those. I just, I don't know what I say, but because if we join in, we're creating we're not on a path to happiness. We're starting to do a thing. Have I answered you?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I think it's just, Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's very helpful. Yeah. But it is, it's in the moments of when you know you're needing to be still, but it feels like it's a thing to do or a decision to be made, and you can be wrangling with it. Okay, no, it's no other thing than this.
It's the wrangling that's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, the wrangling is the energy, because there are times we have to make decisions in life, which way we're going, what we're doing, what's going on.
Yeah.
But actually, it's the wrangling that's the issue. We need to trust. We have all the answers are within us. Every single answer that ever was is within us. Everything we need to know. Everything, we're creating absolutely everything in front of us. And if we know that everything in front of us is something to do with us, and we come back to stillness and we investigate it, it's a very different thing. As many of you know, I will respond to questions you might ask me on text, and I will do it with a voice note. And I don't think about what I'm going to say. I read your questions, and I just then respond. And I have the question in front of me, and I trust that my inner being knows the answer, and that I don't have to think it. Because if I think it, I'm starting to think it, I might start thinking it in, well, I don't know what I'd be doing, because I don't do that. So I think that what I do, when you ask me a question by text, and I answer you, I'm only reflecting your own, if it resonates with you, I'm only answering what you knew anyway. And, you know, often people have said, oh, I knew what you were going to say, but I just wanted to hear it. Because I'm going to bring you back to centre and know that you have all the answers within you at any time. And if you're rambling, you're up in your mind, and you can't. The mind is schizophrenic. The mind, by its very nature, goes, shall I, shan't I, yes, left, right, what's next, backwards, forwards. The mind's an amazing tool, but if we let it run off on its own, it's schizophrenic, and it just goes back and forth. Whereas we come back into our centre, the answer arises now. Sometimes we don't like the answer because it is going to go against societal norms, parental views, what our friends might think. We might have to make a decision because we know it in the core of our being that's right for us, that is going to go against conditioning and our peers' views. And I think that's the bit that gets the wrangling, is that the answer comes and then we don't like what we've got to do, because it can be very difficult to go and have to say to somebody we don't want to be with them anymore, or we don't want to do this job, or or we're going to move, or whatever. Yeah, is that answer? Yeah. Oh, is that the end? Oh, what? It's 10 o'clock. Oh. Well, perhaps we ought to just do does everybody know the Gayatri mantra? Who knows the Gayatri mantra? Well, anyone who knows it, let's just do a few rounds of Gayatri mantra just to finish. Because this is the most the most chanted mantra in the whole of the planets, everywhere. And everywhere, now when we chant it, it will be being chanted somewhere else. And it's really about the inner reflection. It's that we are reflecting our inner sun with the outer sun. And then when it's chanted, it means that our energy field become more illuminated, and we can be our true essence. So I'm sorry for people, I haven't got the thing of it's on. We'll just have to go along with the people who know. So we'll do again three conscious breaths, and then we'll begin. So we breathe in. Breathe in. Breathing in. And then the next time we breathe in, we'll breathe out, we'll start the Gayatri. Om Bhuvah Svaha Tassa Vito Varenya Vado Devasya Divani Diyo Yona Prachodaya Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.